Hi guys, this is your assignment, how to write your introduction in body paragraph 1. I'm pretty sure the way I'm going to do this is go over the introduction, then pause. I suggest you pause at that point, take a break, maybe do this later, do it the next day, but this is your Monday and Tuesday lesson. So here we go. All right, so this document's going to be shared with you. It's the same document from last week, but this version I just made some edits from my lessons. So your document is going to be shared back to you, but you're going to have access to view this one. All right, so you should have done lessons 1 and 2. We are going to start with your writing your introduction. And just to note, I also want you to write body paragraph 1 because this intro is going to be pretty quick, I think, for most people. All right. Lesson 3, writing your introduction. If you wrote your thesis, this is the easiest part. Now, I have that like that. Most of you guys wrote your thesis statements. So if you have your thesis, you are 1/3 of the way done, 33% done with your introduction, which might not sound like a lot, but it is. Your introduction is going to be 3 sentences. So it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, but you already wrote 1. So it's as easy as 2. Right? So simple. All right, so here's what your introduction is going to look like. And just a reminder, you have access to this document. It's slightly different than yours because I took notes in it today. If I'm talking too fast, right? Because normally as a teacher, I'm looking at you. I can tell, you can raise your hand. If I'm talking too fast, hit pause, right? Go back, send me an email. If this isn't working, do that, or join my Zooms. I'm going to be going over this same assignment Monday and Tuesday at 9 a.m. Also, you can watch the Zoom videos because someone might have asked a question. All right, so here's your outline for your introduction. Remember, it is 3 sentences. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the first sentence, let me make this a little more clear. Sentence 1. All right, so in the first sentence, you're going to introduce the novel by naming it and naming the author. Now, the novel's name is Purple Hibiscus, right? So let's go ahead and make sure we know that. Make sure you spell it right, spell check, all of those things. And we're always going to italicize our book titles. That is the correct format. Don't really feel like going into a conversation about that. If you want to know why, email me. I can tell you. But for now, just know you do that. All right. So introduce the novel by naming it and the author, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Now, her name is difficult for a lot of us to spell because it is Nigerian. Make sure you spell her name correctly. So you're also going to give a brief overview of the subject of the book. So what is the subject of the book? Well, it's about a family, right? So you could talk about the family. It's about family. What kind of family? Happy family, sad family? Dysfunctional. Dysfunctional family. That's all you could say. If you don't like the word dysfunctional, if you don't want to say exactly what I say, define dysfunctional. Synonyms. Okay, there's none over here. But you can, that's what Google's for, right? Thesaurus. Okay, sentence 1, introduce the novel Purple Hibiscus by naming it and the author and giving a brief overview of its subject. Now, if you don't want to talk about its subject, there are other things you could talk about of its subject and put 4 other topics listed below. So other topics you could discuss is if you wanted to talk about the publication. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie wrote the novel Purple Hibiscus in. Google it, or if you have your copy of the book, open it to the front. It tells you. You could say where the book is set or where she's from. Nigeria. You can tell us a little bit about her. She's a really interesting, famous person. Tell us a little bit about her. Or a brief summary of the novel. That's what I did, which you'll see when I show you my example. Make sure you spell her name correctly, okay? Make sure you italicize Purple Hibiscus. Yeah, I already told you that. There are some options with your first sentence, but essentially it's like the broadest part, right? So something really big, either something about the author, a big summary of the book, something really broad. So let's look at my sentence. I'm Amanda and Rosie Adichie's novel, Purple Hibiscus. Okay, so I have her name, I have her novel. Drop my commas. Tells the story of a family that is strictly controlled by an abusive father, Eugene Achiki, who controls all aspects of his wife and children's lives. All right, so I gave a very broad overview of the story. There's a father, he's really abusive, he controls his whole family. Okay, so that's a very broad summary of the book. There's no spoilers, there's no like specific information. I only talked about one character. Don't have to list everyone in the family, no quotes, keep it really big. Right. So what do you do in the second sentence? All right, second sentence. Give a more specific summary of the book centered on your character. Now, what do I mean by your character? The character you're focusing on in your essay, okay? So if you remember the vocabulary, I said you go broad to specific. So we have a really broad overview of the book, and now we're going to introduce the character we're talking about, okay? Now, in my example, I'm using a mock-up because you guys can't write on a mock-up, and I don't want you to copy mine exactly, okay? But here are the 4 characters you can write on. And you have access to this document. This isn't in your original document because I just did this today. Here are some words and descriptors used to describe characters. Do you have to use any of these? No. But if we were in class together, we'd be brainstorming and talking about this. We're not in class, so this is like my little brainstorm that I shared with you guys. So if you're writing about Mama, you could say she's the nurturer in the family. You could call her Papa's main victim. You could call her a survivor of domestic violence. Any of these. If you're doing Jaja, you could say he's at the beginning of the novel a really neat boy. He won the award for neatest boy. He's an obedient child. You could say, at the start of the novel, maybe he's following in his father's footsteps because he's doing what his father asks. Maybe he's unsure on how to stand up to his father. Another thing you could talk about with Cambili and Jaja is that they're very silent and they communicate with their eyes. So they do a lot of at each other at the dinner table or probably not sitting with that and get mad at them. All right. So your second sentence is a more specific summary of the book centered on your character. So if you come in my Zooms, I'll write some examples of this live in the Zoom. Someone can be like, Papa's mine. I'll be like, look. So here's mine for my sample introduction. Remember, you can't write about Amaka. Eugene's niece, calling him Eugene because there he is, right there. Eugene's niece, Amaka, serves as inspiration for his daughter, Cambili, as she learns to gain her independence. Okay, so I'm just introducing who my character is. What's her role in the novel? Well, she's Eugene's niece and she's Cambili's inspiration. All right, now it's time for my thesis statement. Now, as far as the thesis statement goes, please, before you put it in your introduction, go back to last week's assignment. You can just copy and paste your thesis, but make sure you read my feedback. If I did not give you feedback, that was a mistake. Now, I haven't finished everyone's yet. I'm planning on trying to do it tonight. If you don't have feedback yet, I'm getting to it. I'll get to it tonight, tomorrow. If you're like, hey, I'm going to write this and I don't have feedback, just email me, make a quick comment. I'll do it as fast as I can. The one thing to note is if yours just says, great, perfect, and you have 100 just sitting there, that means you had no corrections to make, okay? So some people didn't get corrections. Now, those of you who did, don't get in your feelings. 75% of you had corrections to make. It's not because there's anything wrong with you. This is school, right? If we were in the classroom, I'd be walking around, looking over your shoulders, telling you stuff. You'd be raising your hand and asking me questions, right? You're meant to learn. You're not meant to do things perfect the first time. And the people who did, maybe they had sat there and revised it already, right? we don't know what people are doing, but don't take it personally like, oh my God, Miss Klein had all this feedback. That's good, because if I gave you feedback, that means you're, that much closer. I don't know why I'm doing that. You're however much closer to getting a good grade on your essay, right? So there you go. All right, so then you put your thesis in. This is a sample thesis that I had in the document. So you put it all together, broad summary of the book, more specific, introducing your character, thesis, where you talk about your character and how they change. So you get really specific. This is what your essay is going to be about. All right. So here's my introduction. Oh, I forgot something so important. Indent. Always indent your paragraphs. If you don't know how to indent, you hit the button that says tab, right? If you're on your phone, you can't use a computer and you don't know how to indent, it's 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I was always told. This looks bigger. Looking like 10 spaces, doesn't matter. 5 spaces, tab button, whatever. Just more than 1 space so I can see you indented. Okay, here's my introduction altogether. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's novel, Purple Hibiscus, tells the story of a family that is strictly controlled by an abusive father, Eugene Achiki, who controls all aspects of his wife and children's lives. Eugene's niece, Amaka, serves as inspiration for his daughter, Kambili, as she learns to gain her independence. In the novel, Amaka evolves from a narrow-minded girl who is critical of her cousin's wealth to a compassionate friend who champions Kambili's attempts to gain independence, revealing the theme that believing a single story about a person will always lead to misunderstandings. So, one thing to note, this thesis follows the kind of template that I gave you. Character, how they are in the beginning, how they change, and the theme that it reveals, right? So your thesis should sound something like this, be in this format, all right? Easy as 1, 2, 3, and you've already done 3. So that's the intro. Pause, take a break, do something, get water, do jumping jacks, I don't know, whatever you feel like. And then we're going to go over body paragraph 1. One more quick note on your introduction, and this is just for when you turn it in. This is not for in your final paper or anything like that. But just to make sure you're doing your introduction in the format I'm asking you to, please label your sentences. I know I said you need to indent, do that on the rough draft document, but label your sentences. So your first sentence, label 1, that's your broad overview. Second sentence, label 2, that's your more specific summary where you introduce your character. And then thesis, label 3. Why am I asking you to do this? Well, to make sure that you've done the format right. That's one reason. Another reason, it'll make it easier for me to give you feedback because I have 130 introductions to read, in a couple of days. It makes it easier for me. You want feedback from me, right? It just makes it easier. And then some of you guys are still struggling with complete sentences. And, some of you guys have turned in work where everything just blends together. There's no period. There's a lot of run-ons. I feel like labeling these sentences will make it easier for you because you need to have a capital letter at the start and a period at the end. So label them. Hi guys, this is the lesson on writing your body paragraphs. We're going to focus on body paragraph 1. Last week with the vocabulary, I wanted you to review teach and what that means. T stands for transition and topic sentence. Transition words, here is a link. I apologize, this wasn't in the document I originally shared with you, but it's in this version you have access to. Evidence, which is your quotes you're going to use to support your points. Analysis, which is you explaining your quotes. And then closure review, ending you making a conclusion sentence for your paragraph. Sometimes people are like, okay, I have my evidence and I explained it, so I'm done. But you need just a summary sentence to make your paragraph seem completed so that your reader isn't thinking, was there something else I'm going to say? What was their point? Make your point clear at the end. But don't say my point is, because that's too clear. That's like talking to me like I'm you know, like I'm not understanding. Assume I understand, but be clear. Okay, so we're going to write body paragraph 1. I'm going to write an example right now. No, you cannot use my example word for word, but yes, you can use it as inspiration. All right, so for your first body paragraph, and I'm really, this lesson is designed like you should have your thesis in your intro. If you don't have your thesis in your intro, this isn't going to be helpful or make any sense. So if you don't have your thesis in your intro, stop, go back, do that. All right, so your first body paragraph says, discuss how the family falls apart in chapter 1 and make connections to earlier events that led to this catastrophe. So since I said chapter 1, you know your evidence has to come from chapter 1. So yay. All right, so we're going to have a topic sentence describing how the family fell apart and what your character had to do with that. Your quote, you're going to explain your quote and what that has to do with the family falling apart. And then you're going to clinch it by kind of maybe talking about how this connects to your character and the changes they're going to make. So let me just demonstrate it for you. I'm going to write a paragraph live. Now mine's a little trickier because my character is Amaka, which, you know, I did that so that you can't copy. That makes it a little harder because she's not present for these events, but I can do it. We can do it. All right, so before I get started, then it's going to be really helpful for me to look back at my thesis. It's always helpful to go back to your thesis to remember, like, what is the point I'm trying to make. So I'm actually going to take my thesis statement, copy it. I'm just going to put it up here as I write. This is something that I actually do so that I always know, okay, here's the point that I'm trying to make. So I'm just going to copy my thesis right here. This is just helping me. This isn't like, I'm not saying you have to do this. You're actually not even going to turn in this document. This is just like your drafting document, if that makes sense, where you're creating your rough draft and you're working through different steps. All right, so my thesis was, in the novel, Amaka evolves from a narrow-minded girl who is critical of her cousin's wealth to a compassionate friend who champions Cambili's attempts to gain independence, revealing the theme that believing a single story about a person will always lead to misunderstandings. Okay, so thinking about the family falling apart, I can think about, in my thesis, how I'm talking about a single story and how I'm thinking about, like, okay, Amaka was critical of her cousin's wealth, okay? So Amaka is a person who thought, oh, my cousin's rich. Her life is so great and perfect, okay? So I'm going to latch onto that as the focus for this paragraph. All right, so my topic sentence is going to be about how the family falls apart, but I'm going to tie it to my thesis. So I'm going to say, to the people, I almost messed up, transition word. Okay, so transition. Let's go to our list of transitions, which this is the link I have for you in the document. This tells you a lot about transitions. I was just hoping for a list. Okay, here we go. This is the perfect part. And I usually print this out and give it to students. Can't do that this year. All right, so this tells you like relationships and then transitions. So if I'm trying to say something similar, if I'm trying to say something different, if I'm talking about the order, there are better ways to do this. But you know what? This is what we got. This is what we're going to do. Okay, so first, second, third, next, then finally. I'm going to go with to begin or in the beginning. Yeah, because first is just, I don't like first. Okay, and this is what it's like when Miss Klein writes, and I told you I was writing live. All right. We're just going to say, so another way to do a transition is like a transitional phrase. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a word, but a phrase. So like in the beginning. So that's a transition. Okay, so in the beginning of the novel, right? Because chapter 1 is the beginning of the novel, not chronologically, but the way it's written. In the beginning of the novel, the Achiki family appears to be a model. The Achiki family appears to be a model of domestic bliss to the town of Enugu, because that's where they live, the town of Enugu, and to their extended family. Now I'm putting extended family there. You don't have to say that. I'm saying that because my character is a mock-up. Okay, that's the only reason why I had to do that. Mine's harder because I'm writing about someone who's not there for this part. All right, so topic sentence. I have a transition phrase right here in the beginning of the novel. Okay, so you know I'm going to be talking about the family appearing to be happy, right? All right, so now I want to give evidence that they're going to fall apart. I'm going to use a quote from the novel with the page number cited. Now, what I did for you guys, and you can find this in a couple places, but one place you can find it under this assignment, which I gave you last week, but I updated for this week. I've put a document called Purple Hibiscus, Chapter 1. And if you open it, you'll see at the top, I have some quotes that I suggest you use. You don't have to use these quotes, but they're just there for people who need help. And then I have all of Chapter 1 right here. So I have suggested quotes in Chapter 1. Now, because I'm trying to do an example and I want it to be just kind of basic, I'm going to use the very first sentence of the book as my example, my evidence. All right, so my paragraph. In the beginning of the novel, the Achiki family appears to be a model of domestic bliss to the town of Enugu and their extended family. Now I'm going to write my evidence sentence. Now, at first, I'm just writing this sentence by sentence, and I'll pull it back together in a paragraph at the end, okay? But this is how I write, piece by piece by piece. Okay. However, right, because I'm showing a contrast, so however is a great word to show contrast. However, on Palm Sunday, 1995, on Palm Sunday, 1995, the family's problems became inescapable. Yeah, nope. See, sometimes you don't know till that line shows up. Okay, so that is how I'm going to introduce my evidence. I'm going to show this to you this way first, and then I'll go back and show it to you the other way. All right, so this is how I'm introducing my evidence, my quote. This is a sentence, okay? If there was nothing else, I could put a period and it's a sentence. However, on Palm Sunday, 1995, the family's problems became inescapable. Because this is a complete sentence, I introduce my quote with a colon, okay? Not a semicolon. Don't use semicolons with quotes. I'm using a full colon because what follows, this is a complete sentence, and what follows is going to be a complete sentence. Now, I still have to use quotation marks because a quote means I'm quoting it from the book, right? So there's my quote from the book. And I'm going to close, before I actually close the parentheses, I'm going to come in and put the page number. This is from page 1. Since I know that this is from Purple Hibiscus, because that's what you're writing about, you don't have to put anything else. Normally, you would put the author's last name in the number, but all of your quotes are coming from Purple Hibiscus, so you just put the number. That's your page number. Okay. Topic sentence. Evidence. Connected with this. I'll go back and show you another way at the end. We're just going to keep going. Okay, so now I'm going to analyze, meaning explain the evidence in my own words. Okay, so my evidence is that things started to fall apart when my brother, Jaja, did not go to communion and Papa flung his heavy missile across the figurines on the attached array. Okay, so I'm going to say the narrator of the novel, Candy, describes a violent scene her father threw a heavy book. Well, heavy's already in there, so I'm going to say can't see around my head. There we go. Look at my head. Threw a large book at her brother Georgia due to his defiance. Okay. So hopefully you remember from the notes I told you your analysis should be the longest part. So I'm going to add another sentence of analysis. So I'm going to go back to my topic sentence where I said they were a model of domestic bliss. Bliss means happiness. I put bliss because I like the word. Now I'm going to explain how this shows that they're not a model of domestic bliss. A happy family would not engage in a fight after church. So this scene is our first hint that the family is dysfunctional. This is my analysis, all right? Now I got to clinch it, okay? And this is where I have to remember, like, go back to my thesis. I'm writing about a makkah. I have said nothing about a makkah in this paragraph, so I need to bring it back to a makkah, like the point of my essay. Okay, so Cambili's cousin and inspiration, because I think I said that in my thesis. Cambili's cousin and inspiration, Amaka, is not present for this brawl. I'm trying to use different words, not the same ones over and over again. Is not present for this brawl, which explains why she Cambili's life is so perfect when they reunite over the Christmas holiday. So now I have 5 sentences, okay? I just wrote them following teach. So I actually do that. I follow the teach steps. Now I'm going to put them together. So I'm just going to copy them so that I have what I originally wrote as I edit. I'm going to paste, and I'm going to erase all of the the outline type homework stuff. And I'm going to read it through. Okay, this is an important step that I think sometimes we forget. We just like write sentence by sentence, and we don't come back and read it through together. Now, my stuff looks all crazy because I made my colon super huge because I wanted you guys to see that. So I'm just going to make my colon huge again, though, because I want you to, I'll just bold it and underline it. I want you to see that's a colon, and then I'll switch it in a minute. Okay, now paragraphs need to start tabbed. There we go. So you hit the tab button. If you are typing this on your phone, I'm sorry, it's not fun. 10 spaces, I used to think it was 5, but this looks like 10, so just go for 10. I'm not going to count, just indent. All right, in the beginning of the novel, transition phrase, the Achiki family appears to be a model of domestic bliss to the town of Enugu and their extended family. However, another transition word, not required, but good because I'm showing a contrast. However, on Palm Sunday, 1995, the family's problems become inescapable. That's a complete sentence, so I connected to my quote with a colon. Things started to fall apart at home when my brother Jaja did not go to communion and Papa flung his heavy missile across the room and broke the figurines on the étagère. Page number. Period. End quotes. Sometimes y'all forget that end quote. Put that end quote there. If you don't put that end quote, then it's really just like incomplete and not good. End quote. Okay. I know the book, so I know you're done quoting, but like, let's say you're in college or another class and people are like, are they still quoting? You want to make sure you're done quoting. All right. Now I'm analyzing it. The narrator of the novel, Cambili, describes a violent scene where her father threw a large book at her brother Jaja due to his defiance. Second sentence of analysis. A happy family would not engage in a fight after church, so this scene is our first hint that the family is dysfunctional. All right. Now I'm going to clinch it and tie it back to my character and my thesis. Kambili's cousin and inspiration, Amaka, is not present for this brawl, which explains why she thinks Kambili's life is so perfect when they reunite over the Christmas holiday. Okay, this sounds good together. Now, you still need to do this step. Yours might not sound good together. I've been writing for a gazillion years. This is what I do. I'm your writing teacher, okay? So don't be intimidated by me. I'm like 21 years older than you, okay? Like crazy. Don't freak out. All right, so the other thing I wanted to show you was how to connect the quote if it's not a complete sentence beforehand. So let's say I wrote this and then I wanted to stop it. I was like, okay, that's a sentence, done, okay? And then to introduce the quote, can I just have a quote here as a standalone sentence? No, we can't, okay? So to introduce the quote, here's what I would write. So now I could take this part, which I put down here, the narrator of the novel, Campbell, explains. All right, so I have my introductory phrase to the quote. This is not a complete sentence. The narrator of the novel, Campbell, explains. You're thinking explains what? Because it's not complete. So instead of putting a colon, I put a comma. Okay, so now there's a comma and a quote, and there I go. Now, is this good writing to have this appear twice like that? To have two sentences in a row start the same way? No. Sometimes for style you might do that, but this isn't a stylistic choice. This is just redundant, repetitive. So I got to fix this second one, right? Because I put it up here because I liked it. I liked that I wrote that phrase, but I'm going to move it up here. All right, so down here, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to change it to something else. Okay, so since I already introduced Campbell and said her name, I just say she. She. I don't know if she's Campbell because she explained, she describes. There we go. So that is another example of the body paragraph using a different type of quote. Yep. All right, so I hope this was helpful in showing you how to write your first body paragraph. I'm going to do 2 Zooms about this. You're going to have this document with my sample body paragraphs. I'm available through email, Remind, Classroom, all that jazz, Instagram, all that. So if you need help, please reach out to me. I really mean it. Now here's that awkward part where I have to figure out how to stop the video. Dun, 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 dun. Gotta find the, here we go, see you later.